Sup YouTube? I'm back with a pop culture review with featuring all the brilliant stuff I've been up to lately. So let's get right into it because I got, I think, 7 items today. And you know I talk a lot. Even though I could probably do it in like 1 minute a piece, I go on like 10 minutes a piece. First up, Book 2 in the Star Wars Alphabet Squadron series called Shadowfall. In this second installment, Alphabet Squadron, the ragtag crew of New Republic, former Imperial fighters that have come together into this weird squadron to track down the elite Imperial unit, Shadow Wing, are still at it, and they weren't able to get them polished off in the first book, so they've suffered defeat, or not necessarily defeat, but not success. And they want to try and find a way to finish Shadow Wing off and get them out of their hair. So this is after Return of the Jedi, a little ways after, with the Imperial remnant in disarray and trying to find leadership and scattered across the galaxy and weak and everything. And the New Republic's trying to stamp out these remaining pockets of resistance one by one. And Shadow Wing, this elite squadron of TIE fighter pilots, is one of the biggest threats. So that's what Alphabet Squadron has been put in place to do, and it is led by Eureka Quell, who is a former Shadow Wing pilot herself, who has gone over to the New Republic side. So they think they come up with a really brilliant plan. In the Cerberon system above the planet Troith, there is an asteroid coming into orbit of the planet that's gonna pass by the planet, and the New Republic, so it's Eureka is the leader of the squadron. She works with a guy named Cairn Aiden, who is her commanding officer and an intelligence officer, and together they work with Hera Syndulla, who was the leader of the Star Wars Rebels team, and is now a general for the New Republic, in devising the strategy they're going to use to hunt down Shadow Wing. So they think they come up with a really good plan where they can let information about this asteroid leak out and let the Empire know about it, thinking that they're going to take the chance to put Shadow Wing on this asteroid, sneak into the system above on the asteroid so that the New Republic doesn't know they're coming, and then once they're in range of the planet, they'll just disembark from the asteroid, do their damage, and take the planet. So the New Republic is thinking we're gonna let this information out. They're gonna take the bait and do that. But little does Shadow Wing know we're gonna put our ground troops on the asteroid first. So when Shadow Wing lands there, we're not gonna have to fight these guys in the air where they're strongest. We're gonna take them out on the asteroid on the ground. Before that even happens, it comes to that. So things are all going to plan, but then they don't, and all of a sudden there's a battle above and on Troith that sees Alphabet Squadron kind of get decimated, scattered across the kind of planets in this system, and there's a few different things happening on different fronts where Will Lark and Nath Tencent, two members of Alphabet Squadron, have to now lead a ground campaign on Troith when they get grounded there after the air battle, and with whoever's left over from the battle on the ground, they have to lead them on a way to kind of take the fight back to Shadow Wing and get off the planet. Eureka Quell, in the meantime, her and Cairn Aiden have got stranded on this weird asteroid thing, with no escape in sight. And Kairos, one of the other Alphabet Squadron pilots, gets hurt and almost killed in action, so she's out of it. So there's all these different things going on as Shadow Wing attacks and gets the upper hand on Alphabet Squadron and the New Republic. And it's kind of this fight for Alphabet Squadron to take the fight back to them and hopefully reverse fortunes. And something happens where Cairn Aiden gets kidnapped by the Imps, and in the event of his death or disappearance, he had it so that a message was sent out about Eureka Quell's past and her involvement in Operation Cinder and some other things like that. If you remember Operation Cinder, that was the storyline of Star Wars Battlefront 2, the video game, where after Return of the Jedi and the Empire fell, they just rained death down upon planets with these weird satellites or something like that. and Yuriko was part of that Operation Cinder that brought so much death and destruction. And, and also in that game, if you've played it, you remember there was a hunt for Palpatine's strongholds that he had scattered across the universe, where he kept certain treasures and artifacts and stuff like that. One of those plays a part in this book as well, that helps get Yurika off the asteroid that she's stranded on with Karen Aiden. So really cool story. Lots of action and lots of, flips and momentum and what's going to happen next sort of thing. So I think it's just a trilogy. I think maybe the next book is the last one in this series, but I'm not exactly sure. But it's definitely on my list, and will be read and talked about soon enough, hopefully. Next up, we finished season 2 of The Mandalorian, and what a fucking season! It starts off with the Mandalorian on a quest to reunite the little baby Yoda with his species. In order to do that, he needs to find the Jedi. In order to find the Jedi, he needs to find more Mandalorians who he believes can steer him towards the Jedi. So it's kind of the start of the season is him looking for more Mandalorians. It takes him to Tatooine, where he meets this marshal guy who helps him get rid of a crate dragon, and for doing so, he offers him some advice on where to find more Mandos, and he also gives him some Mandalorian armor that looks oddly familiar, like Boba Fett familiar. Then he ends up, where does he go next? He eventually meets up with some Mandalorians, a girl named Bo-Katan Kryze, or Kryze or something like that, who is in line to lead the Mandalorians, and she wants to reclaim the Darksaber from Moff Gideon, who is in possession of it. And if you remember the Darksaber, it featured into the Star Wars Rebels cartoon series when Sabine Wren, the Mandalorian on the Rebels team, had possession of the Darksaber for a little while there. And so that was kind of cool to see that link and everything. And eventually, after he deals with the Mandos and stuff like that, he's eventually led towards a planet. I can't remember the name of it, but there's this weird stronghold out in the midst of this planet that's continually being attacked by a Jedi. And we learn that this Jedi is Ahsoka Tano, one of my favorite Clone Wars characters, is now in live action form, played by Rosario Dawson, and she's fantastic. I loved it. So this compound is being attacked continually by Ahsoka Tano, and when the Mandalorian lands on this planet, he goes to this compound, and they're like, you can have this Beskar spear if you can end the Jedi. So he goes and searches for this Jedi, but he's like, they want me to kill you, but I know I'm looking for you. I need you to train this little guy and tell me what the hell he is and take him to where he needs to be. And so Ahsoka deals with Baby Yoda, who we learn his name is Grogu, and she says, nope, I cannot train him. He's too old. Same thing as Anakin not wanting to be trained by the Council, sort of thing. But the Mandalorian's like, well, you promised me that if I helped you take down the fiends in this compound, you would train him. Which is a whole awesome battle when the two of them fight these guys at the compound. And at the end of it, Ahsoka's talking to the lady that runs this little compound, saying, tell me where Grand Admiral Thrawn is. So Thrawn is going to factor into the series, it looks like, too. So that's another cool link. But Ahsoka gives the Mandalorian some advice on take Grogu to this temple on the planet whatever and put him on the stone, and it'll help him find his way. And so that is their next stop. So they go there, and he is followed by a pair of people, a mercenary that he dealt with in the first season but didn't kill, who kind of comes back on him now but actually ends up becoming an ally, and she is accompanied by Boba Fett, who wants his armor back. So it's a bit of a standoff at first, but once the imps show up on this planet, they quickly make a team, and Grogu sits on the top of the temple and finds some sort of Jedi spirituality thing going on, and there's a big battle that ensues, but in the end they can't save Grogu, and he is kidnapped by Moff Gideon. So part of the deal was that Boba Fett would help the Mandalorian protect Grogu. So they're like, well, I guess we got to go find Moff Gideon's ship, right? But they're like, how do we do that? So then they release this guy from prison with the help of Cara Dune, who's now a marshal for the New Republic, and he's a guy that we saw in the first season when it was like that show, that episode on the ship where it was kind of like Alien, where they were kind of racing through the ship and freeing people, and it was all dark and red lights, and it was a really cool episode. So this former Imperial sniper named Mayfield, I think it was what his name is, he has some knowledge as to how to acquire the whereabouts of Gideon's ship, but they have to visit this Imperial planet in order to get at a terminal and find out. So it's there's a whole adventure there, which is an awesome episode. And then after that, they acquire the intel on where Gideon's ship is, and so the last episode of the season is them, Bo-Katan and her Mandalorian comrades, Boba Fett and Fennec or whatever her name is, the Mando. They all plan a raid on Gideon's capital ship, and it's a really cool final episode on this raid on his ship. The dark saber factors in, and at the very end we see Grogu taken away by somebody who is going to train him, who is a Jedi, and who is one of the most famous Jedi. And that's all I'm going to say because I don't want to spoil it, but it's pretty awesome. So amazing series. Second season way better than the first, and the first was amazing. So let's hope the third takes it even higher, right? Next up, this is a TV series I just finished watching that was from the late 80s, 1987. Only lasted one season, 22 episodes, and I have the full series on DVD, and it is called Captain Power and the Soldiers of the Future. So, Captain Power was kind of a cheesy sci-fi series from the late 80s, like I said. And the story was that it's the year 2147, I think it is, and humanity has gone through something called the Metal Wars, where these robots rose up, kind of like Terminator, and fought the humans and tried to make them extinct or whatever. And there was this big war, and the Earth is just in ruins. It's like the apocalypse, and the mechs, the robots are led by a guy named Lord Dredd, who is like kind of half human, half cyborg, and his main opposition is Captain Power and his allies. Captain Power, he is the leader of this gang, and they have these special power suits that when they touch the little logo on their chests, the suits come on, and they give them these weird powers that just make them so much more powerful than they would be without the suits. It gives them, Hawk has the ability to fly. Tank has this, he's just a walking armament. Scout has like stealth capabilities and disguise capabilities. And then Pilot, I'm not sure what, she flies the ship. I'm not sure what her suit actually does though. And her and Captain Powers, I think they're just tough or whatever. They're just powerful. So it's those five that are on the main Captain Power team, and they're basically just taking the fight back to Dredd. Dredd and his forces, his biomechs, these evil robots, they digitize the humans. So they shoot them with this gun, and it basically turns them into digital matter, I believe it is. So Captain Power and his allies are just taking the fight back against Dredd, trying to reverse the damage he's done and stop it from happening. And it's just kind of this adventure as they do that. The unique thing about Captain Power was, and the thing that drew me to it as a kid, I would have been around 11 or so when this came out. There was a series of toys released by Mattel that you could use to interact with the show. At a certain time during each episode, there was a sequence where you could use the toys to kind of shoot at the TV and interact with what was happening on screen. I don't know exactly if it worked well and exactly how it worked because I never had the toys, but there was some sort of thing going on there, and you could tell when you watch the series and you see the robots and they have these weird glowing parts on them and stuff like that. That's kind of what that's all about. So really cool concept before that was even really a thing, because now there is interactive things all the time, right? And so that was kind of ahead of its time. And apparently it was a Canadian American kind of co-produced show, so I know some of the actors were Canadian and stuff, so that was kind of cool. But yeah, it was kind of neat very surreal kind of watching it all these years later, because a lot of shows I've kind of kept in touch with over the years. I've never fully forgotten them, but Captain Power I totally forgot about until a couple years ago. Something jogged my memory about it, and I was like, geez, I should see if that's on DVD and get it, right? And I did, and it was awesome to watch it all these years later. There was a season 2 fully written, I think, and fleshed out, but for some reason they never shot it, so it only lasted the one season, unfortunately. Last up, we got 4 games. This one kind of disappointed me. It's Juiced for the PS2. It's like a street racing game, but it just seemed to go nowhere. It takes place in a fictional town called Angel City, which is kind of a knockoff on Los Angeles. And you're a street racer, and you go buy a car, a crappy car to begin with, and enter races and earn money if you win. You can make bets to against other racers to further your winnings, or hit you with some losses as well. And for winning stuff, you earn rep points from each of the other kind of racers in the city, and that increases your rank and stuff like that, and allows more events to open up for you. But I stopped playing this game after a while because I found that it was monotonous. It was the same old events over and over again. You never got to go to a different location because you have to have a certain amount of rep from a certain racer in order to access the events in their area. But it takes forever to earn rep. And it just got so boring and so repetitive. It was the same old track every time. You know, it's just like, you just never seem to get anywhere. And I'm thinking, if I'm going to ever finish this game, this is going to take me years, unless I just sit down and play it hardcore. And it just didn't hold my interest enough to do that. So it's too bad. The game looks, for a PS2 game, it looks pretty good enough. Plays really well. It just, the way they made the game work and unfold along the way just didn't work for me. So yeah, it's too bad, but it is what it is. Next up, Juiced 2 Hot Import Nights for the PS3. Vast improvement. They dropped the rep thing. They dropped the whole talking on the cell phone thing. The calendar's gone. Basically, in this game, you are, geez, bleeding all over the place here. There's maybe 10 or 11 or 12 different tiers of racing. You start at the lowest one. You buy a car, and you have to complete a certain number of objectives in each tier in order to unlock the final event in that tier that will push you up to the next tier. So you don't have to complete every single task in each tier to get up to the next one. And the objectives are varied. There's one like just simply win a circuit race, win any type of drift event, reach a top speed of 220 miles per hour, spook certain racer or racers. Spook is when you drive behind them for a little while and get them nervous, and then they crash on their own, sort of thing. So depending on the objective, win a bet worth $35,000 against this racer, right? So, and they're all different for every tier. It's a different mix every time. So, win a pink slip race, whatever. So, so depending on what type of objectives are there, a certain tier can be pretty tricky if the objectives don't fall in your wheelhouse, or pretty easy if they do, right? Because drifting in this game, I found, to win drift events, even though I was an okay drifter, there's only really one drift event that I could ever routinely win, and the rest were all a real challenge. So if there was a lot of drift related stuff in any of the tiers, that's what kind of stopped me in my tracks, and that is what stopped me on the game. I was near the top. I was in the third last tier maybe, and I came up against too much drifting stuff, and I couldn't get enough objectives for the win. So so I kind of had to quit that game, not because I wanted to, but because I had to. So vast improvement over Juiced, though. So much fun. Customizable cars. You pick your character. You can customize your character. awesome cars in the game. The game controls really well. It looks really good. There's lots of different tracks compared to Juiced. Now, compared to other racing games, maybe not so much, but way better than the original Juiced. They just made improvements all around on that game. And in the original Juice, there was 4 different types of events. There was a circuit race, which is a certain number of laps, a point-to-point race, which is just start here and there, a sprint race, which was a drag race, which sucked, and then show-off events, which is basically like just drive around the track and do fancy things like donuts and drifting and reaching high speeds, that sort of thing. It was kind of a useless event. Whereas in Juice 2, they got rid of the whole drag race. There's no more drag races. There's a couple different types of circuit races. They got rid of the point to point. They kept the circuit races, and there's a couple different kinds. There's just a certain number of laps, or there's an eliminator style race, where at the end of each lap, the guy in last place gets eliminated until there's only one left. There was one called Last Man Standing, which was really cool. You have to drive the race and never hit. You can hit other cars, but you can't hit any sides. You can't hit any walls or any barriers. So I find in those ones, you drive a lot more careful and just try and hang in there, because what comes in handy on those races is that you can spook people. So you just, play it safe, drive up behind somebody, spook them, let them crash into the wall. They're out of the race, and just slowly work your way through the pack, get everybody, and then hopefully, hang in there enough to get everybody out and win the race. A really cool event. I really like that one. And then there's a few different drift events. Just a solo drift where you got to reach a certain amount of points. Drift obliterator where you have to win the race and maintain a certain amount of drift points on each lap, and then other stuff too. So lots of different variety within each race category. But overall, just a really fun, well done game, and just I can't stress enough what a vast improvement it was on the first Juiced. So yeah, huge. And I think there might be a Juice 3, but I'm not sure. But either way, I think I've played enough Juiced as it is. Next up, NHL 2K11 for the Wii. I've never played any 2K games in terms of hockey. I've played some other baseball and stuff like that. But with so many good hockey games out, with the EA Sports NHL Hockey, that's the only one you really need. But then I've played some other ones like NHL Hits, which is amazing. The Face-Off series I'm working my way through right now, plus other ones, Mario Lemieux Hockey, Blades of Steel. There's tons of hockey games. It's awesome. So I never really got into the 2K series. The 2K games for Wii suck. And I don't say it because they're bad games overall, but just the controls. The controls are terrible. I play it with a classic controller because with the motion controls, it's just awful. The classic controller helps improve it a little bit, but it's still really frustrating. You press the shoot button and he doesn't shoot, and you keep pressing it and pressing it and pressing it and he doesn't shoot. And sometimes you just wait that little bit too long, and it's like there's something off with the controls. And a lot of times, like you have to be careful about which guy you're switching to, because when somebody's skating backwards on their own with a CPU, and then you switch to that person and they turn around to start skating backwards forwards, it's like they're turning the fucking Titanic, right? It's like, oh, okay, I gotta stop first and then turn. Meanwhile, the guy's fucking blown by you. He's on a breakaway, and they score literally almost every time on a breakaway. There's just a lot of really, really frustrating control type issues in this game. And I did play through the whole thing on a season, won the Stanley Cup, and it was a good final series against Vancouver. It went 6 games. They were all really close, other than the last one. It was a blowout. So I stuck in there, I hung in there, I played the game, because it was still worth it, because although 2K11 had shitty controls, and it's a little rough around the edges in terms of graphics and stuff, there was a lot of really good AI stuff in terms of player reactions, player movements, the way you could control the flow of the play in zone time in the zone, some of the passing plays you could do. There was a lot of realism in some of the gameplay and AI in the game. I really found that a really good feature of the game. And and I thought they really did a really good job there. So, and they also have some good game mode selections. Of course, they have season mode, playoff mode, whatever, all the usual ones. But they had mini rink mode, so it's just kind of an oval rink, and it's really small, so there's no space. They have pond hockey, so it's just basically an outdoor rink. And then they had a really cool mode, which I didn't really get into, but it's called Road to the Stanley Cup, something like that. I can't remember, but it's kind of like a journey across the country, playing mini games, and you use your Mii to play the game. So that was a really kind of different kind of game mode that no other types of hockey games have that I know of. So they threw in something like a real curveball there with that one. So I thought if this game hadn't, you know what, the more rudimentary graphics and stuff like that, fine, I can live with that. I don't give a shit about that. But with the extra game modes and the cool stuff like that, it was a really good feature. But it was just the controls were so bad and so frustrating that it just brought down a game that could have been probably like rated like 70, 75, brought it down to like a 50. You know, like it's like, yeah, there's some good stuff, but there's also some really shitty stuff. It's like right? Whereas it could have been substantially higher, and it couldn't compete with the NHL series, but it could have been a lot closer if they just sorted out the whole control issue. Last up, speaking of NHL hockey, NHL 20, starring Austin Matthews. Yeah, boy. So this game is awesome. We're playing. We've if you've known, me and James played through NHL 15, 16, 17. We're working on 18 right now. And this game was an improvement in terms of the game speed and the hitting. NHL 18, if you watch some of the gameplay footage, we can lay some pretty good hits in 18 if you get the right situation and stuff like that. But a lot of times it can be really hard. You think you have a guy lined up, but he sneaks away on you, or you hit him and he doesn't go down and you just didn't get hard enough or whatever. Hitting's everything to me in a hockey video game. So in this game, they cranked up the speed a bit. It's a little more arcadey that way. The game speed is a lot higher, which allows you to make just the flow of the game is better. And if you miss a check, or if you make a bad mistake in terms of forecheck or anticipating where something's going, it's easier to recover because everything's just faster. But the hits, they made the hitting just devastating. If you want to hit a guy, you can obliterate a guy. The hits in this game are like car crashes, and that just makes it so much more fun. And so we played through the regular season on this game faster than we've played through any other NHL season so far, and it was just so much fun. We went through the playoffs, won with the Leafs, and it's just, I was kind of sad when it was over because I had so much fun with this game. In terms of game modes, it's got pretty much the same stuff as the last few versions of the game has had. They got all the different, like the franchise mode, the be a pro mode, season, playoffs, shootout, whatever. All the online modes, which I don't really know about because I don't do that kind of stuff, but there's all sorts of different online shit you can do. And I believe they might have the NHL 3s, the 3-on-3 in this one as well. They've had that for the past number of years. So there's all sorts of game modes to keep you going. And the main difference in this game was, I believe, what did they say? The broadcast team was one of the big differences. It's been Doc Emmerich and Eddie Olchuk for the last number of years. This is the first year they switched over to James Cebulski, who used to be a TSN guy. He maybe he still is. I just haven't seen his name for a while. And Ray Ferraro down in between the benches. So, and Ray has been in prior games too doing that, but the main broadcast team went from Doc and Eddie to just James Cebulski. So that was a big change there. And yeah, just overall an awesome entry in the NHL series. I mean, every NHL game is good in its own way, but some of them are great, and that one is great. So that's all for now, but I'll be back probably in the very near future with more shit. Until then, stay frosty.